Hello, and welcome to Beginning with AndEngine. My name is Len Payne, and this is the first in a series of tutorials on using the AndEngine gaming engine to make Android games. Today we're going to fine-tune the Adt configuration to make sure that your Android developer tools are set up and ready to go. Then we're going to acquire the AndEngine packages and build a sample application. Then we're going to talk about what we've done and what we're going to do next. So the first thing we need to do is ensure that you have all the required build packs. When you install ADT, it includes only the build packs for the newest version of Android. So anything that targets API 17 or lower, for example, would not build correctly. You need those backwards compatibility packs to build with those older APIs. So the way we do that and the way we check that is over in your Android developer tools. You have the option to, under Window, work with the Android Sdk Manager, the Software Development Kit Manager. You can access this also it's in the root folder, part of the ADT bundle, if you grabbed the ADT bundle. Running this opens this program. You'll see here that I already have all of these installed. If you run this program and you don't have them installed, they're going to be checked off over here on the left, and you'll have an install packages. My system's completely up to date right now, but in general, you would have anything that is not up to date would be checked, and you could hit install packages. Okay. The next thing that we need to make sure of is that we have the AndEngine packages. They're currently held at GitHub. The easiest way to get to them is to go to the andengine.org webpage. Loading. There's a link to the source right here in the middle. Click, which tells us that it's been moved from Google Code to GitHub. There are many ways to grab down the latest branches from GitHub. For our purposes right now, the easiest thing to do is to download the zip file. Now, we can put these anywhere. I'm going to put them into a folder called AndEngine inside my Android root directory so that everything's organized and in the same place. So I open up the zip file and extract it to the folder. While I'm here, I'm going to scroll down and grab the AndEngine examples, and I'm just going to grab one of the AndEngine extensions to show you something. So we're grabbing a zip file for the examples and the zip file for a random extension. So at this point, we should now have the AndEngine examples project, the AndEngine itself project, and the multiplayer extension project. Now that we have those acquired, we're going to import them into the Android development tools. Right now, you do not need to do anything on this window, so we can just close it. The first time you open up the Android developer tools, you should have a blank workspace here on the left. We are going to import existing Android code into our workspace. The root directory is going to be that AndEngine folder. By selecting this AndEngine folder, it's going to give us a list of all the sub-projects inside that. Much easier than going in one by one and importing a bunch over and over again. We want to copy the projects into the workspace to make sure that all of our current working versions are in the same place. That way we can update the original locations without affecting any current projects. Import, import, import. As it goes through and builds the workspace, you'll notice that we get various warnings and issues. Alright. Still building. You gotta be kidding me. I downloaded the extensions to show you that most of the extensions don't work, and I picked one of the extensions that actually works. So we're going to go grab a different one. Again, the steps to import are fairly simple, and you get the benefit of seeing them twice today. You'll see when I try to import that same folder, it knows don't bother importing the ones that already exist. Building, building, building. Okay, now it's just playing with me. I'm going to pause the video and download all the extensions because this might work out really, really well. 1 minute. Alright, welcome back. I grabbed all of the extensions, and you'll notice that several of the extensions are currently showing errors. So for example, if I go into the physics box 2D extension, there are several errors in some of these packages. Some of that has to do with a difference in SDKs. So for example, you see down here when I tried to import, I got unable to resolve target Android 8. The most current version that I'm building with is Android 19. So I don't have an SDK that builds back that far. What I need is to either update that to something that builds under 19 or find an SDK that builds back to 8. Neither of those are within the scope of what we're going to cover today, because as you can see, AndEngine works just fine. It's only got warnings, not errors. So what we have right now is a whole package of packages that cover all the different varieties of AndEngine tools, from utilities to OpenGL tools to entities and basic engine elements. What we're going to do next is to build a new application project where we're going to borrow one of the sample activity classes and make sure that we set the activity to launch. So popping back over, we are going to create a new Android application project that I'm just going to call Sample 2013. Going to give it a package name, set it to target the latest SDK, and hit Next. We are not going to create an activity. This complicates some of what we have to do, but the main activity that we're going to build is going to be based on one of the AndEngine activity classes. We're going to create a custom launcher and create the project. The custom launcher icon we're just going to leave as this guy. There are a bunch of options you could do, but for all now it's no big deal. And again, we are not creating an activity, so this should not be checked. Alright. It has rebuilt the project that I created earlier, which is just peachy. Apparently that can be undone. We're not going to call it Sample 2013. We're going to call it Sample Project. Or even better, Sample AndEngine. I just love all the little tiny errors that come up because the system is trying to help me. Again, not creating an activity. This is okay. Not creating an activity. Right. So in my sample AndEngine project, you'll notice there are no source packages. We want to add one. And the biggest reason we want to add one is because we are going to steal a file from over here. This is under the AndEngine examples project. We are going to take line example and paste it into there. Give it a minute. Now, the first thing it does is it tells me org.AndEngine cannot be resolved. What that means is that I need to go to the sample AndEngine project, right click, get its properties, and set up the Android libraries. I need to add AndEngine. All my errors go away. The next thing I have to do is to make sure that this activity, this simple base game activity file, is the activity that runs when I start this application. So I go to Android manifest. There are several different parts of the Android manifest. You can edit the pure XML file, but for simplicity's sake and ease of use, we're going to use the GUI. What we need to do now is down at the bottom, we need to add an application node. We are adding an activity. The activity we have needs a name, So we browse for a name, and it's going to find that line example file. Everything's hunky-dory there. We need to add, so I right-clicked there, added an intent filter. To the intent filter, we need to add an action. The action is going to be intent action main. What that says is this is the main activity run by this application. We are also going to add a category, and the category is going to be launcher, which means that this activity is the one that gets launched. So with this saved, I hit Control S to save. We can look at the Android manifest XML, and you'll notice that it added an activity with an intent filter and a couple of extra elements. At this point, I want to make sure that my Android virtual device is ready, because so far we have set the activity to launch, but we want to make sure it has somewhere to go. So we open up the Adt Manager, and I have set up a fake phone. This fake phone is a Nexus 1, and I am using the host GPU. I highly recommend you use the host GPU, especially if we're emulating games. There comes an issue at certain points where the application might not run, and that has a lot to do with how much horsepower is being used up by that application's thread. You'll see errors in the console that basically say you have too much stuff going on. We are just going to make sure that we have a phone targeting the latest API and using the host GPU. Waiting. We hit OK. And at this point, I can run as an Android application. This is going to if we take a look, it's starting to turn on my emulator. This is going to take a little bit of time, but you can see launching a new emulator. At this point, I'm going to pause the video because this takes about 3 or 4 minutes on my computer. So, pause. Alright, welcome back. The Android emulator will come up into the lock screen. To release the lock, you grab the lock and drag it out. In the regular screen, you will notice that we're installing and starting the activity. So any minute now, the activity should start. If it doesn't, right now this is probably my computer being very slow. But we can load sample AndEngine here. And there you have it. This is what that application does. It creates a screen with a bunch of random lines. So I want to actually walk through that little application and explain what it does. If we look at that piece of code that we borrowed, you'll see it starts out with a public class called lineExample that extends simple base game activity. This is a class that we grabbed from the AndEngine. We set up a couple of elements to start the tools. For example, camera width, camera height, random number seed, how many lines we want to draw. So we can change these. We set up the engine options using onCreateEngine options. This is one of the methods that is gathered from simple base game activity. And all we're doing there is setting up the camera and making sure that we're pointing at it. onCreateResources does nothing. onCreateScene is another part of the engine where we create a scene, give it a bluish background, a lot of blue, not so much of everything else. Set up a random number generator and create a bunch of lines. So here we're setting up random floating point numbers between the 0 and the width, 0 and the height. Setting up the lines. Again, line is borrowed from org AndEngine entity primitive line. So this is also part of the engine. And then we attach that line to the scene and return the scene. That's all that does. Makes a bunch of lines, puts them on the screen. But this is a good test to make sure that we've got AndEngine installed and that we know how to use the ADT. So today we fine-tuned the ADT. We made sure that we had those backwards compatibility build packs that are required to make sure that the AndEngine tools run. Then we acquired the AndEngine library, some of the extensions and the examples. We built and ran an activity on the Android virtual device and made sure that it worked. Sometimes your application may fail, especially on lower end hardware, and the big reason for that is because emulation takes a lot out of your computer. So if you were trying to emulate a virtual device and watching a video, things are going to go badly. I'm trying to emulate a virtual device and record a video on low-end hardware. It goes really well. Anyway, next time we're going to build a game board for Tic Tac Toe and create the user interface to allow you to click on the elements. And then we're going to create game rules to determine winners. So in short, my next video is going to make Tic Tac Toe using AndEngine. Thanks for watching, and I hope you had a good day. Again, my name is Len Payne, and this is the start of the AndEngine tutorial videos. Thank you.